Hello, hello, hello. This is the Fat Panda, and I am pleased to bring you guys the preseason power rankings for the Gyarados League of the WPF Season 8. How have we kept you guys around for 8 seasons? That is like 4 years, you guys. What is going on? So I figured this is a good time to take some time out of my busy schedule and just shred your guys' teams apart for as long as I have the stamina for. Some of you may weep. Some of you may just get angry. Some of you, like myself, just feel nothing at all. But we're going to work on this together to see who the coaches who are any good are at drafting and who the coaches who are not good at drafting at all happen to be. According to my unbiased and completely objective opinions, and we'll see where it is we end up together. I'm going to be going in a 1 through 16, so if you want to see the bad, you're going to have to stick around for a while. And I'm sure there are other things I was going to talk about, but I have mostly forgotten. Oh, and a disclaimer, although this will probably apply more to the Magikarp League because of the Gyarados coaches I know relatively. 15 of you I've worked with before, so you all basically know how I am, but I am going to probably rip a few of your teams apart. Don't take it personally. I hate your team. I don't hate you. I know a lot of newer coaches are in Magikarp and don't understand me yet. So if you take it personally, I might end up hating you. So try not to, and we'll all get along forever and ever and ever. I figure that's probably enough rambling for the moment. So it's probably a good time to get to our number 1 draft. And keep in mind, these are my opinions of the teams themselves. At the moment, because no coaches have technically battled, I am not taking what I believe are the coaches' skills into consideration at all. This is simply how I think their team looks on paper. If it was a blank slate, if you handed me this team, I'd be like, yes. Or I'd be like, Jesus Christ, give me some trades, you know? So the team that I could see most likely wanting to play myself and my number 1 ranking for the preseason power rankings are the Woolloomooloo Wooloos, coached by Nolan, who was our runner-up in the Gyarados League last season. There are a lot of things I really do like about this team. Just look. Listen, you can hear it. The inspirational music swells up when I'm talking about this team right here. It is a hell of a team. How the heck did anyone allow Mega Medicham to drop to the last round? You can't let anybody draft Mega Medicham in the last round, because then there's absolutely no way to counter it. There are very few Pokemon in this game where you have to specifically draft for, and I'm pretty sure this is one of them. So there's going to be some very unhappy coaches in Division soon. But let's ignore Medicham. Okay, it's really good, but I'm sure the rest of the team is crap, right? No, it's not. That's absurd. I think he was near the end of the draft order, so somehow he got Dragapult late. I'm not a giant fan of Dragapult, but I understand its potential. I just have trouble using it myself, but it is a very strong mon. And you pair its offensive power with the likes of Obstagoon, Medicham, Scolipede can hit really hard when it's got a Sword Stance up. Celesteela can hit very hard. I mean, there's a lot of absurd stuff. And the fact that he dedicated basically his entire Dragon Fairy Steel Core to offense is pretty preposterous. I know Slurpuff really misses return, but Belly Drum Slurpuff is still a outstanding threat. And the web set on some teams, specifically this team, are just devastating. You cannot let webs come up when there's a Medicham on the other side or an Obstagoon on the other side. The other thing that really impresses me about this team is he was paying, I would assume, or he got very lucky, he was paying very close attention to the speeds of the Pokemon he was drafting. If you look at this team, there are basically no large gaps. He has good spacing all the way up. He starts at 35, 40 with a couple of his slower bulky mons, Quagsire and Rhydon. Some good middle speeds, 61, 70, 72, 86. Lots of good middle stuff where you can play around with running things kind of fast, drop their speeds a little bit, creep around the other defensive mons or some slower offensive mons. That's around when you start getting the ability to run Scarf as well for faster things, for surprise KOs. As well, you've got 95 and 100, those good meaty near the 3-digit speeds. 112 which is just absolutely a fantastic speed tier. Beating 110 at any point is always a good thing. And the fact that mon has speed boost as well is just absolutely cataclysmic to the opponents that are going to be facing this team. And then, of course, there's Dragapult up at 142. Maybe not the fastest mon in the game, but as far as draft goes, it may as well be the fastest mon nearly every single week. That thing is going to be forcing opponents to run a lot of Scarfers. And it's really going to be able to abuse that as well between Sub or Dragon Dance. It can absolutely screw with the opponent's prep all the time. So being able to spread out the speeds like that is really important because it really forces your opponent to not drop speed for bulk at times. A lot of teams tend to make mistakes when they're drafting and leave large speed gaps in places that allow, like, for example, if you have Pokemon you max out at speed of like base speed like 100, let's say. Well, if your opponent's drafting 110s, all of a sudden they can, or 111s or whatever the point is, I'm losing it off the top of my head, I think it might be 111. All of a sudden they can start either dropping Modest and hitting you harder, or they can start dropping speed and running like Timid, and they can start bulking up, which makes your KOs significantly harder. So getting a good spread of speeds really does help. The other thing I really like about this team are the mixed messages it sends in preps. There are a few mons here that are obvious kind of what am I going to do mons, like Medicham is rarely going to do anything but come in and click like high jump kick. I mean, sure, it could do weirder things. It can run bulk up, or you could try to run like a teleport set and risk everything. I think it gets teleport like Gallade does. I'm not 100% sure about that, but we'll pretend it does for the sake of my analysis. But a lot of the mons in this team can run very different sets. Not even different, like, I could run Dragon Dance, or I could not run Dragon Dance. Ooh, what's gonna happen? Cough, cough, Gyarados, cough, cough. A lot of these mons can just attack in completely different ways, or Dragapult is very good special. It's also fairly strong physically if you can handle not having a good Ghost Stab, but between Dragon Darts and Steel Wing if you've got fairy troubles, or then like a fire coverage special move or something, like, yeah, it's mostly special. It's going to be special probably 10 weeks out of 12, but you have to be prepared for Dragon Dance, that thing, Dragapult. Same with Celesteela. Celesteela can either be a bitch ass fucking Leech Seed set. It's got cheese options now, I believe. It could also run Meteor Beam and be fast and just kill you like that. Or it could, it's got so many different ways to annoy people or to sweep that while the theory of how to hurt it is probably the same, you can't just bring in your Electrics on it every time because, oh no, all of a sudden they ate an Earthquake, or, it's just, you can't grind it out because it's immune to toxin and has leech seed. Like, there are a lot of really good things about Celesteela. Rotom Heat, another good example of mixed messages. It could be really fat, it could run Nasty Plot. Chances are when you switch something in, if it's not what you expected, you're screwed. Scolipede is pretty standard. It can run Swords Dance, it can run Baton Pass. It can also be a suicide lead with like spikes and toxic spikes, and he has the team to support that as well. He can easily convert this team into a hyper offense team and just bully someone into submission. Slurpuff is a fantastic example of mixed messages. It can run Belly Drum. It could be a suicide lead with Sticky Webs. It technically has a Calm Mind set, but don't run that. It's bad. I swear I didn't bring a Calm Mind Slurpuff to the finals match in Season 3. It did nothing, by the way, because it didn't happen. Serena, it's mostly offensive. It's got Rapid Spin. It's fat, but it can't, it's not going to wall things for the most part. Obstagoon hits hard and fast, but there's mixed messages. The one thing that I do feel kind of holds this team back just the smallest amount is I think often it's going to have a somewhat one-note offense. And by this, I mean that this team is geared more physically than special. Dragapult will often be special. Celesteela will often be special, but it's not going to primarily be offensive. It can be, but it's not primarily going to be offensive. It's primarily going to be a bulky kind of hit thing. Mixed even, probably. Rotom, once again, it's special. It's all it does. But it's often run bulky as well. It can run Nasty Plot, but this team is a little thin on bulk at times. If it wants to run like Celesteela or Rotom's offensively, it's going to suffer a little bit because then Quagsire or Rhydon have to come, and they share a lot of the same weaknesses, which can get a little confusing at times. But that's really where I think the bulk of the offense on this team is physical. You've got Scolipede, you've got Obstagoon, you've got Medicham, you've got Rhydon, you've got physical Dragapult. If there was one place I was going to knock the team, it would probably be right there. But looking at the team, it's really not a big deal because, I mean, of the look at the first 3 picks, Dragapult, Celesteela, and Rotom, they're all primarily going to be special attacking of choice. So, it's there. It's just not as outstanding as the physical presence on the team. That's really all I'm trying to say. And I think that's probably enough about the team. So I think we should move on to our number 2 team, shall we? At number 2, I have the West Texas Torterras, who drafted probably the single most balanced team that is in Gyarados League this season. It just does basically everything well, and it has all the options you could want. He's got a Sand Core in there, which, I mean, it's 2 good Mons, and he's got Overcoat Mandibuzz, so he could whip out a Sandrush Excadrill any week, but he's not reliant on it. And that is what is truly important when you want to run any weather. Do not commit your entire team to that idea. He has just enough support for it to be needed to be prepped for every single week, but he doesn't ever have to bring it, which is hugely important. Other than that, he drafted at least one of every single type in the game except Ice, which is easily the most just screw it type. Unless you're drafting an offensive Ice type like Kyurem or Weavile or Mamoswine, just leave it at home for the most part. As much as I would love to see someone draft Avalugg and do well with it or something, it's just meh. People fawn over Cryogonal, but it's in tier 5 for a reason. It's just meh. I'd rather draft most things than a defensive Ice type. So having all the other types in fashions that, none of these things are really all that bad. Executor Lola is not good, and we'll get to that. But, overall, this team is just absolutely fantastic, well-balanced, all over the place. Once again, I was talking about good speed spreads. He's got it. He's got really slow Mons. He's got Gigalith and Slowking 25-30 speed. He's got a bunch of middling guys, 60, 80, 88, 110 for the Gallade, 124 for Ribombee, 143 for Zeraora. These are just wonderful speed tiers. People are going to have a hell of a time adding extra bulk to their mons because he's just got everything accounted for in this scenario. If I had to knock West Texas for anything on their team, it's going to be the Fairy Dragon Steel core. He did not prioritize that core, which is, it's fine for the most part, but of those three, he got a really good of the best one. He got a good Steel. He got Excadrill. Excadrill's great offensively. It's great defensively. It runs good in the sand. It runs good out. It can be, it does a lot of things really, really well. So that's fine. And Ribombee is a great fairy type. I don't think it should be counted really. Don't count it as a fairy type because unless it's running like Quiver Dance or something, it's not really, its typing doesn't matter. It's just a mon that sits there and stun spores and sticky webs, and the U-turns out maybe to come back later if it gets, removed, stuff like that. Dragon, he may as well not have drafted a Dragon. Executor is bad. I don't think it was worth drafting over other grass types I can't remember what grass types are even in tier 5 anymore, to be honest. It might have been the best. It's certainly better than regular Executor, so there's that. But, and Tangela was probably gone by round 10. In fact, I'm sure it was. So there's, no one's going to draft Shiinotic. That hasn't been done in a long time. At least not successfully. But, once again, if I really have to knock the team for anything, it's probably going to be that. Otherwise, I guess I wish it had spikes. But a lot of coaches this season didn't draft spikes. In fact, half the league doesn't have a spike setter. There are more coaches with toxic spikes this season than spikes at all. Which I think is a waste. Mostly unrelated to West Texas specifically, but I really do think spikes are so much better these days. If you're forcing things to run heavy-duty boots like Moltres or Togekiss or whatever, the things, things are running heavy-duty boots for Stealth Rocks, and that doesn't mean don't run them. It means draft them so you force that mon to use heavy-duty boots, so you essentially waste its item slot. But you should be prioritizing spikes more as coaches because you're getting more value out of a spike than a Stealth Rock these days. People do still run heavy-duty boots on like Zeraora, for example, or even Excadrill to avoid things like webs or spikes, but it's significantly less common. Or the Slow King, Slow Bros run heavy-duty boots a lot as well. But I think the value you get out of a spike is actually significantly more than the value you get out of a Stealth Rock these days, even if you obviously always have to have rocks, just because of how game-changing it is for things that are weak to them, because it forces items or you get tons of damage. That's really my rant for West Texas. I guess technically that's a con for their team. I wish they had spikes. If they had spikes, good lord, I would be just fangirling over this team even more than I may already be. If we drop down the rankings one more time, we get to number 3, where I have the Boston Red Sox. I believe I have them higher than most other coaches seem to do this season, and there are a lot of things I really like about this team, and there are problems. I think you can all probably see one obvious problem. There are 3 birds on that team, and 2 of them are very similar. But starting with what I really like first, obviously drafted Chansey. I think anyone who drafts Chansey is probably at least in the top 5 for me. It's just a one-mon defensive core. How much more could you need? And he even asked for it to be shiny with one of his champion shinies, or not champion, final shinies. So, what more could you ask for? That's literally asking me to put it in the top 3. But if we look at the rest of this, this team is reminiscent of a style where a style that was used in season, I want to say season 4 of the Gyarados League, where Pulsey drafted basically a complete Sun team, and it was just Sun plus 3 Sun abusers. It was season 5 because she had Charizard G-Max. But regardless, where the team was just all in on one style, and even if you have a way to stop that style, nothing can stop 4 Mons of the same type. 4 Mons doing the same thing. It's basically impossible for one thing to stop. And then all of a sudden you've broken through and you have free reign for the rest of the team. Now, she didn't manage to make the team work in the end of the season and miss playoffs, but this team, I think, can do it. Now, of course, you're thinking, well, he's talking about Sun, but there's no Sun on the team. Yeah, in this case, I'm talking about the physical offense output of this team. Garchomp Mega, Physical Jirachi, Zapdos Galar, Lycanroc, and then technically Keldio's Secret Sword hits physically as well. Everything on this team just punches you in the mouth on the physical side. Leavanny hits physically. Electros, I guess, has coil and fun stuff. So it's all there. This team is going to live and die by the physical walls it sees and can break through. Outside of that, I'm not gonna lie to you. I put up these slides 2 days ago now. I have absolutely no idea what putting on weight means. I'm assuming it has something to do with Chansey, Moltres, Articuno, Jirachi, Weezing. There's a lot of really good fat mons here. Depending on the scenario, all of them can shine very well. Moltres Chansey, in fact, is a combo that I love to use regardless, outside of draft even. That is a tasty combo, because even if you get the heavy duty boots knocked off of Moltres, people don't want to get burned and stuff. It's just a nice combo. But regardless, I assume it has something to do with the bulk on this team, which, defensively, this team has a lot of options, which is really nice. Also, Electros is just always fat. It's one of those mons that I feel 90% of the time people run Assault Vest on it, and it's not the wrong idea. Kecleon's another option for that. Things that just, Assault Vest is just their item. It's it was made for them. It's just absurdly fat and hits relatively hard, and it's just annoying as shit. Weezing is really fat. Weezing does not care about anything that attacks Chansey. They are besto friends. Anytime you get something that covers Chansey's weaknesses and can defog, you are basically completely golden. There's just a lot of things that are really good about this team. If I had to name things I don't like, once again, that offense, it is almost entirely physical. Keldeo can has special water attack. Moltres and Articuno can attack specially, but neither one is often run specially. And Electros has special moves as well as Jirachi, but neither of them are known for it, I guess. Jirachi now has Calm Mind and Aura Sphere and all sorts of other stuff now, so Store Power, I think. It's just got a whole bunch of options as well too, so it can be quite special. But when you look at this team as a whole, you go, oh my god, I gotta bring my physical walls or I am a goner. So it lends itself to, if the Boston Red Sox can kind of work around this and get around opponents prepping for them physically, they'll be fine. It won't be a problem. Other thing I really don't like about this team is the speed tiers. Earlier I was talking about how spreading it out really helps, prevent people from adding bulk or doing stuff like this. His speed tiers are just terrible. Well, it's not, I guess terrible isn't the right word. Not great. There is very little spread. His lowest speed is 50, his highest speed is 110, and everything's kind of clustered together. 50, 50, 60, then 85, 90, 92, 92, then 100, 100, 108, and 110. Everything's just kind of, So it's going to be very easy for opponents to, get things to, figure out their speeds and cut some speed for, health, or cut speed for more offense if possible. It's going to be a lot easier for teams to do that. There's no like having them on at like 120 or 125 speed really helps, because then Scarfers can't run Modest or, stuff like that. It's just, that's one problem that will come up in team building and the battles for the Boston Red Sox, is that they are going to find that they're not going to be hitting things as hard as they thought, or they're going to be taking more damage than they thought because of the speed creep or the speed cluster factor. Other than that, I mean, there is the absolute obvious problem with this team. There is a lot of electric weakness, and there is one immunity, and that is Garchomp Mega, who does not want to take any chip if, for example, you switch him in thinking it's going to be Thunderbolt Revolt switch and you eat a flash cannon, or whatever, it doesn't matter. Garchomp hates being chipped down. Now, having something like Wish Jirachi or Wish Chansey or whatever helps, certainly. But electric attacks are quite free to spam against this team. I think Boston is going to be relying heavily on Chansey to kind of sponge those. Problem is, it's got Volt Switch, and Volt Switch into like a fighting type or a dark type is sucky. So I think electric types are going to give him fits this season. I would not be surprised to see Boston maybe drops like Articuno for a ground type if there is a good one left, Dugtrio Alola or Claydol or something like that. If those are still around, I can't honestly remember. I think Claydol was drafted, but Dugtrio wasn't. Or maybe like Electros because he doesn't have an electric type. Something maybe somewhere. Finding another good electric immunity specifically would be nice. Maybe even a Lightning Rod absorber, like a Lightning Rod or something, if exists. That would probably be my suggestion. To see if you can find something. Maybe you can't. I can't remember what's available. Like grabbing Pikachu and then maybe dropping Electros or something. I don't know. I'm just making it up as I go, after all. But overall, team is very strong, has some very obvious weaknesses that people are going to try to exploit, but anyone who is good at prep can kind of counter those exploitations as they show up. This is going to be a team that wins or loses a lot based on prep. At number 4, I have the Midwest Mawiles, and I know this team is probably not a team people expected to see this high, but I love it. Okay, anyone who knows me, they see Deoxys defense there, and they're like, okay, yeah, this is obviously once again just catering to Panda, but God, I love this team. I love a lot of things about this team. I hate Silvally. I just hate that Pokemon, but it's good for the team, and I can't hold it against him. I just don't like Silvally. Once again, and I'm going to hit this. This is probably going to be the thing I hit the most this season. It's just something I think needs to be emphasized more when you're drafting, is speed spreads. Once again, Midwest Mawiles has done a fantastic job of that. Down 34, all the way up to 123, and the largest gap is base 15, which is between 65 and 80, so it hardly matters. That is absolutely absurd. No one else had nearly that small of a gap, except one other coach had it down to 19. Everyone else is in the 20s or the 30s, for God's sakes. Having those kind of speed, those tiny speed gaps is just so important. No one's going to be cutting speed almost at all against Midwest Mawiles, which is fantastic for them. Another thing that I just love about Midwest's team is that there is the utility for this team all over the place. It's got all the hazards except toxic spikes. It has, good hazard control, good cleric options. Has great options for momentum, teleport, U-turn, parting shot, volt switch, baton pass, like just friggin' everything. It's got all of the support moves that your team is going to need to be a successful team outside of just killing things. But speaking of killing things, this team hits you every which way. And it's not necessarily the most common attacking types. I mean, you have Deoxys Mega, Rock, and Fairy. Fairy, of course, is a very those are two amazing attacking types. and being good at both in the same package is just absurd. Silvally with the newly buffed multi-attack at 120 base power, plus Sword Stance, plus 95 base speed and or Flame Charge. You can just pick, look at your opponent's team, pick that type they're weakest to, make Silvally that, Sword Stance up, multi-attack, oh look, the team's all dead. Crazy. Mamoswine is famous for being able to hit just about everything between Earthquake, Icicle Spear, Icicle Crash, Ice Shard, whatever ice moves you want to run, Knockoff, Superpower, Rock moves. It just hits everything super effectively that has ever existed. It's absurd. Araquanid, Water Bubble, Liquidation just blows up your opponent. Melmetal, Double Iron Bash, absurd. Pangoro, Fighting and Dark coverage together, a stab, oh my god. Good electric attacker, decent dragon. This team just absolutely destroys with its coverage. It's not even actually coverage, it's all these things primary attacking types. They're just fantastic offensive cores. And they're consolidated in the same dang mon. Diancie is an entire offensive core. Pangoro is an entire offensive core. I mean, oh my god. Mamoswine is its own offensive core. How do you prepare for that? That's crazy. One thing that if I look at this team and I go, oh, that's a problem, it's bulk. There's Deoxys, which is fat. Tangela, fat. Flareon can be fat. There's other options to mix in there, of course. Araquanid can be bulky. Melmetal can be run defensive or special defensive, like Iron Defense and Body Press and weird stuff like that. Silvally can be run bulky, but please don't do that. It's bad. No one who runs defensive Silvally should ever laud themselves for having done so. But overall, the defense on this team, Noivern can be run bulky quite often. It doesn't necessarily need to invest in all that much special attack. It can just run HP and speed, and even cut speed, because it's 123. It can cut speed at times. The bulk on this team is unfortunately quite obvious, and that'll make prepping for it to break it a lot easier than most teams would think. It also doesn't help that none of them are immune to toxic, but you can't always afford to get a defensive steel or a defensive poison. So, you live with what you got, or natural cure mon or something. But I think that's probably the biggest problem this team is going to have, is its defense is not probably up to par compared with the other teams. Outside of that, though, absolute banger of a team. I would draft this team in a heartbeat. It is beautiful. At number 5, I have the Collingwood Corviknights. This team is actually probably, for me, the hardest team of all of them to evaluate. I could not decide if to put this team high or to put this team low, because there's things I really like about it, but there are big problems. Tapu Koko is the best Pokemon to draft. It's my opinion. I think I'm right. I know there are people that disagree with. They would say Mew, or, Urshifu Single Strike if it's allowed, or whatever. But for me, if I had a first pick in a draft, I would literally never not draft Tapu Koko. Even without the hidden power moves, I think it's far and away the best thing. So he gets, in my opinion, the best Pokemon in the draft. Even this season, where we allow Blaziken with Speed Boost and Zamazenta Crowned, I would still have picked Tapu Koko. Well, okay, I might have wanted to play with Blaziken, but I think I would have mentally kind of regretted it, because I didn't technically pick what I thought was the best option at the time, because I still think it'd be Tapu Koko. But that is a debate that will be settled probably as the season goes on and we see how effective Blaziken is between Gyarados League and Magikarp League, where it was drafted in both, obviously. Regardless, Tapu Koko is amazing. Urshifu Rapid Strike has not had a chance to shine yet in our leagues. I'm very interested to see how it is. It has obviously been overshadowed by Urshifu Single Strike, but with that banned, I am very curious to see how it goes. It's absolutely devastating when used right. It just has its obvious drawbacks. Surging Strike hitting 3 times with contact is obviously one of them. But Collingwood made a smart decision and drafted one of its best counters in Tangrowth. I mean, now obviously Tangela exists, Vileplume exists, you know, all these things. Ferrothorn exists, but at least getting one for yourself is obviously a good way to go about things. Aerodactyl Mega is an absurd Mega. There's just a lot of really strong individual Pokemon on here. And when you put them all together, you find that this team actually loops fairly well. And by loops, I mean with momentum. You've got U-turn all over the place. You've got Volt Switch. You've got Parting Shot with Incineroar if you want it. You have a lot of ways with this team to put yourself in a really good position, and he has the Pokemon to take advantage of that. Getting in Urshifu, you know, quote-unquote, for free, or Aerodactyl for Dragon Dance, quote-unquote, for free, or bringing in, like, Hoopa against a slower Mon that's weak to it is crazy. Hoopa, I cannot wait to see Hoopa used. I'm sure it won't be used as much as I want, but oh my god, do I love base Hoopa. And that's really where I get to with the second point, Road Hard, Put Away Wet. This team hits like a motherfucking truck. Urshifu is crazy offensively strong. Hoopa has a base 150 special attack stat. What the hell? I didn't even know it was that high. This thing's down in tier 3 because its speed sucks and its typing is awkward. But, oh my god, 150 base special attack. And it's got like 110 attack too if you just want to be really weird with it. Like, oh my god. Mega Aerodactyl with Tough Claws hits really hard. Tapu Koko has access to Calm Mind, so it can kind of go in it ×2. Metagross has a base 130 attack stat, so it can hit really hard. Hitmonlee has, like, you know, Unburdened sets with, well, he's got, of course, Koko to abuse it, but he can also, you know, like the Curse Unburdened sets or something can be one-turn wonders as well. So this team just does hit really hard, really fast. Downside about this team has a huge speed problem. There is a mod at 97 speed, and then there is not another speed number until 130 at Tapu Koko. The difference between 97 and 130 is the entirety of some teams' offense. Those teams are going to have a field day by making things modest, adamant, adding a ton of HP if they want the HP instead. It's going to make killing things with the aforementioned really high attack stats of like Urshifu or Hoopa or Aerodactyl a lot more difficult, and calcs are not going to go the way that this coach thinks they're going to go to a lot of the time. Making a trade with this team and finding something that has like a 110 speed or a 115 would add a lot of help to this speed gap because it is a big problem. Otherwise, another thing I don't like about this team, it's got like half the team can use Stealth Rocks, but it doesn't have access to spikes, toxic spikes, or of course webs. I think having the option for more versions of hazards is always preferable, even if you're not running a balanced or a stall team. You know, this is more of a bulky offense team. Yeah, but even then, having access to the other hazards is, I think, important. This team actually would really like to have sticky webs, I think. But regardless, this team is very strong. It will destroy things, and you just have to hope that the speed and the lack of other hazards doesn't drag him down. And with that, at number 6, we have the Reunited Kingdom with a banger of a team as well this season. Once again, as I've stated before, and I'm probably going to go over it with nearly every team, speed tiers are the name of my obsession this season. And the Reunited Kingdom is the coach. Earlier I mentioned that no one was close to that 15 except one, which was the Reunited Kingdom with a 19 as the largest gap between speeds, having 30, 35, and then that gap up to 54. That is the least important gap of my life. 35 to 54 does not matter. Things barely ever creep there. but then, slowly creeping its way up to 84, then a small gap to 91, 99, 100, 110, 126, especially up high. Those are great. Now, of course, that 100 is Comfey, and the 110, I believe, is Tauros. So things that aren't going to come a ton are in that gap. So you could say the gap is like 99 or 91 to 126, but I think both of those are weirdly viable enough in a lot of situations. I mean, I love Comfey as it is. It may really miss Hidden Power Fire at times, but it's still very strong and can absolutely just win the game all by itself. And Tauros has a lot going for it for no reason. It hits fairly hard. I think it's got base 100 attack stat with, of course, Sheer Force, so Life Orb, and then just good moves. So I think they're going to come more than you would think. But other than that, the other thing that, and I kind of mentioned it with Comfey here, is this team can set up out of nowhere. A Mega Scissor with Sword Stance or Curse. Landorus has Sword Stance, got some Rock Polish. Comfey has its Calm Mind Shenanigans. Scrafty has Bulk Up or Dragon Dance. Both are amazing. Talonflame is Sword Stance. Tyranitar is Dragon Dance. Reuniclus is Calm Mind and Acid Armor. I mean, oh my god. Any one of those mons, if it comes against a team that's not ready for it and it has like that kind of set, it's over. So you have to prepare for all of those sets every week. That's a lot of completely different Pokemon that can all ruin your day with a single move. Good lord. Now, if there are problems with this team, one of the big problems I see is utility. He only has 2 Stealth Rockers. That is going to be rough. It sucks to use Landorus as your Stealth Rocker every week, but his other is Tyrantrum, who hates rocks even more. So it's going to be painful to use that. On top of that, the hazard control in this team is suspect. Scissor, Landorus, Comfey, and Talonflame. None of them ever want to have Defog on their moveset. So it's going to be a little more awkward for him to deal with, to both utilize and deal with hazards on his team, because you can handle having like awkward defog or awkward rapid spin if you're a heavy hazard team. So for example, if you have a lot of spikes or toxic spikes, and he's got Toxapex of course for the toxic spikes, but no spiker once again, and only 2 rockers, which means he's not going to be setting up a ton of hazards, which means he's not going to be forcing his opponent to defog, which means of course he's going to have to do it himself when he comes up against someone who wants to stack the hazards. And this team does not enjoy that. Other than that, one thing I don't like about this team all that much is that I feel like a lot of mons are going to be forced into specific roles a lot. And this kind of comes back to that utility option. For example, there is not a lot of bulk on this team. Now, Toxapex, kind of like Chansey, can often be a one-man defensive core. But the United Kingdom is going to be forced to supplement that a lot with a defensive version of Mega Scissor or Landorus or Reuniclus, and those are going to feel real gross to use when you have to do it. Now, of course, there are people that can run like a thick Landorus along with Toxapex every week and not regret it, but I'm not one of those. I prefer not to be forced into those kind of roles all the time, because that makes it a lot easier to be prepped for. And that might be a scenario that the United Kingdom finds themselves in more often than not, which would be detrimental to their success this season. At number 7, I have the Atlanta Beedrills. There are definitely some things I really like about this team. And that's more than just the fact that they have Mega Beedrill, who is probably one of the more just fun, like, Reckham Megas to use in the game. This team just hits you, once again, every possible way. Tapu Lele is an offensive powerhouse now that it's up in Tier 1 with an unbanned Psychic Surge. It's going to be ripping off Fat Psychics or Future Sights or Psyshocks, covering them with Moon Blasts for the Dark types, and maybe Focus Blast if he's feeling real brave for the Steels. Ripping those out every week. Mega Beedrill with adaptability and its massive attack stat is going to be just blowing all over the place. Rillaboom hits like a truck in grassy terrain. Bisharp, Defiant or Swords Dance. Those knockoffs and Sucker Punches are going to destroy. Regidrago, who I don't have a lot of experience with and haven't really seen used successfully, of course, has Dragon Energy or Draco Meteor, which just absolutely destroy unprepared opponents as well. So this team is going to be just absolutely chunking opponents. If Atlanta can get the predictions correct and force opponents into bad places, this team is going to be impossible to wall for any team at all. Another thing I really like about this team is actually the double terrain. A lot of times, running a single terrain can backfire at specific scenarios that you're not expecting. One of those things like both Lele and Rillaboom really rely on their terrain to be successful. Lele needs the terrain for the damage boost. Rillaboom needs that terrain for the damage boost. So having two terrain mons on the same team means that whenever these two come in, they will almost certainly be setting up their terrain fresh, which is very important to do. Nothing sucks worse than having to bring in like a Rillaboom to eat, an Earthquake or something, and knowing that your terrain is going to expire after your next turn. So then you have to U-turn out or deal with weaker Wood Hammers or non-priority Grassy Glide. Stuff like that really does kind of suck. Or Lele, if it runs out of Psychic Terrain, doesn't really hit like the truck that people think it does. It's still got base 130 special attack with often choice specs or something, but that extra 30% from the terrain is still massive. So having those two different terrain setters does help. But the downside of that is the terrain confusion. Bisharp does not like Psychic Terrain. He can't run Sucker Punches. He can't Sucker Punch things. Donphan doesn't like Grassy Terrain. His defensive mons hate Grassy Terrain. Vaporeon, Donphan, they are really not fans. There's not, Beware is fat, but Grass attacks it doesn't resist, so if it's in Grass attacks another 30% boost, that sucks. So there are some weird mixed signals this team sends depending on which terrain is coming. It does kind of feel like Rillaboom was kind of a last second addition where maybe something got screwed up with a snipe or something somewhere, and Atlanta maybe just kind of panic picked Rillaboom in response, because a lot of the early picks are a little awkward with it, but I think it'll still work out a lot better than it may seem on paper. So that shouldn't be a huge problem. Other than that, I kind of mentioned that with Donphan and Vaporeon there. A lot of the bulk has a lot of similar ways to deal with it. Now you think Vaporeon and Donphan, of course, one blocks the electric moves, one blocks the ice moves, but then they both get bopped by Leaf Blade. And his grass switch-ins are things that really don't want to just take grass attacks. Rillaboom can relatively well. Beedrill quad resists, but it's still frail as paper. And nothing here if he drafted a good Fatmon that resisted grass moves, he'd be in a lot better spot. That's really the problem I see here. Which it's not, once again, a giant problem. There are not a lot of crazy offensive Grassmons running around the tiers these days. I don't even think Kartana was drafted. He has Rillaboom. Serperior is nowhere near as good as it used to be without hidden power. So, it may not actually end up being a giant problem. A lot of grass types are more defensive, so who knows? May not matter at all, but it just looks a little awkward on paper. Bringing up number 8, we have the Lafayette Larvitar, who were the lucky recipients of the Blaziken Blaziken lottery for Gyarados League this season. I don't remember what pick he had. Maybe 3, 5. It was a later pick than I expected Blaziken to go. But there it is. Round 1 pick this season, obviously, now that Speed Boost is unbanned. And as you can see, with the first 3 picks, Lafayette drafted a absolutely absurd core of starters, picking basically the best starter that's allowed for every single type. Blaziken is tier 1, Venusaur Mega is absurd, and then Primarina, I think, is the best water that's allowed, right? Blastoise is Froligators, Swampert is fine. Okay, a lot of waters are kind of like the same, but I really do like Primarina, and it was down in Tier 3 this season. We kind of overlooked it. It probably should be Tier 2. It's kind of on that weird border that a lot of mods sometimes find themselves in between two tiers. Regardless, disgusting starter cores, disgusting fire, water, grass core. Great start to the draft. Backing it up with some fantastic picks like Scizor, Latias, Crocodile, Staraptor at the very end really gives this team absolutely absurd offensive potential. But the trap that Lafayette probably will find themselves in a lot is similar to some teams we've seen before, where there are little to no real defensive options on this team. Venusaur Mega will, of course, be mostly defensive most of the time. But there is one flying resist on this team, and that is Rotom, which is not going to take like 2 Brave Birds from a thing. Psychic Spam is equally relatively effective, especially if supplemented with like Fairy or something. Scizor can handle it, but like Psychic Fairy just tears this team apart as well. So this team would really benefit from some good defensive mons that could kind of pair well with Venusaur Mega. And they just don't really exist. Some of like the kind of defensive options, like there's a lot of bulky offensive mons with Crocodile, Scizor, Latias, that can kind of help supplement it, but it's not perfect. And that's why he's down here at number 8. Along with a bigger reason, Lafayette has a different speed problem than most of the other people's. His fastest mon is 110, which is just like Boston Red Sox. In fact, I think they have basically the same speed problem now that I look at it. 40, 60, 65, okay, those 3 are right there. But then everything else is within 30 of itself. 80, 80, 91, 92, 100, 109, 110, 110. Oh, those are all so close to each other. It's so easy to prep for this team as far as speed goes. Everything runs the same speed. It's so easy. Scarfers are so easy to figure out here. Like, there are a lot of problems. I can kind of understand why he may have focused on somewhat slower mons, because Blaziken, Speed Poos plus Baton Passing, but I think he went way too into it. There should at least be something of 115 or 120 or better here. There's got to be something that he can trade so that at least things have to think about running at least a little bit more speed against him. Otherwise, there are going to be problems in the future. That's really, that's what I got for this team. I think, once again, this is another team where offense is truly going to shine it because of the ways it's presented. But defensively, this league really feels like these are all really good offensive teams with kind of lacking defensive identities for the most part. So I feel like battles this season are going to be short. I feel like it's just going to be like 2 heavyweights trading blow for blow, and one's going to fall pretty quickly most of the time. It'll just be interesting to see who it is in all these cases. All right, and now we fall into the bottom half of the power rankings. With number 9, the Colorado Cherubi, a team which has a color scheme that makes me want to gouge out my eyes, but let me tell you, green base with pink lettering looks even worse. When I do the power rankings again in 3 weeks after the divisional matches have been finished, I'm going to have to come up with something different, because looking at this bigger, oh my god, my eyes are bleeding. Now, getting into the actual team itself beyond its mascot, one thing I see is that the cores of this team are fantastic. This team has a really good, really interesting fire, water, grass core. I'm not counting Colasol. That is not a Pokemon that is on this team as far as I am concerned. I'll look at the other 10 for the most part. Infernape, Zarude, and Mega Slowbro this core is whack. But it's a Mega, a Tier 2, and a Tier 3. It's super offensive, but also defense. It's really weird, and I cannot wait to watch it. I cannot wait to watch these double monkeys just U-turning all over the place. It's going to be very interesting. Let's see, let me pull up the other. Once again, the Psychic fighting Dark Core. Once again, there's two good Psychic types on this team with Slowbro and Slowking. Drafting the Mega of one and the Galar of the other is certainly an interesting choice. But they're different enough where I don't think it's a huge problem. It's a little awkward, but that's not what I'm here about right now. But good Psychic, good Dark. I am high on Zarude as a mon in draft. If you have ways to punish Pokemon for trying to U-turn on it, which he did draft with Zapdos. This team punishes the shit out of U-turn. Zapdos has Static. Colasol, I know I said when I mentioned it, but it's got Flame Body. There's just lots of good ways to, be like, no, don't click U-turn, you will regret it. So a mon like Zarude is actually significantly more viable on this kind of team than it would be on a normal team, which is why I'm so high at it here. But yeah, so a great Psychic, once again, a great fighting with Infernape, a great, good Dark with Zarude, good core. Dragon, Fairy, Steel, not as strong. A good Dragon. Hexorus is a fantastic offensive Dragon. Of course, Aegislash is a fantastic Steel type. Defensively, offensively, it can do whatever you need. Fairy-wise, Aromatisse is Aromatisse. It's a Cleric, it's fat, it wishes things, it heal bells things. If you're feeling really ballsy, I think it's got Calm Mind, but no one does that and expects to win a match, so And then Electric Ground Poison is also a core that does surprisingly well. Zapdos, Piloswine, Slowking, Galar, they mesh very well together. So I am super excited to see how this team kind of performs with all the cores here. And kind of like what I'm talking about, where there's lots of like unusual things on this team. This team attacks in ways that are just super strange. People generally are not prepared for Zarude as an offensive threat. Grass and Dark? What the heck? Infernape is not widely drafted, it feels like, for whatever reason. Of course, it wasn't allowed since the start of Gen 8 for us, so it's been a while since it was even legal. But even before then, I don't really recall it ever being used. Aegislash, it's like a 50-50 on whether it's drafted. These are all Hexorus is like a 50-50 on whether it's drafted. These are all offensive threats that seem to attack in really strange ways. Ghost Steel. Okay, I mean, Hexorus is just a dragon, so we're going to ignore that. But, Fire Fighting, Grass Dark. These are attack styles, attack stab combos that teams do not generally prepare for specifically. You prepare for Water Ice. You prepare for, stuff like that. Psychic Fairy. Stuff like that. These are just the way these things are going to hit. I think it's going to be super interesting to see how they work together. As far as the ways this team doesn't work, once again, I have to come back to speed clusters. It's not as bad as, for example, Boston's team was, but this team does have speed problems. Specifically, the slow is slow and the fast is... the slow and the fast are clustered together and there's no middle room. This team has 4 Pokemon at base 30 or lower, then a 50 and 60. And then nothing after 60 until 97. That is a 37-point gap. It is tied for the largest in this league this season with another coach who is further down below. And this is easily the worst defender. This team is so easy to figure out for speeds, because even the fast, 97, 100, 105, 108, all clustered. And then 115, which is certainly nice. It's better than 110, which is very important. But that 115 is Persian Alola. So, how much are people going to prepare for it? You're certainly not prepping your Scarfers to outspeed it. You're prepping your Scarfers to outspeed Infernape, which is 108. So this team has definite cluster issues as far as speed goes. ugh. That's really all I got to say. It's just kind of like, ugh. Like, for example, if you're running a Crawdaunt against this team, you don't have to invest in nearly any speed. Crawdonts often have to run speed to at least outspeed like base 70 defenses. Like base 70 speed on a defensive mon that maybe has a 4-point investment. Not anymore. So it can run fat. You know, mons just like that can run fat. And then all of a sudden your other things are having trouble killing. And that's just the whole negative spin down cycle as far as it goes. So I think that's going to be a weak point for this team this season. And then, of course, earlier I was also gassing up how awkward or weird the core, like the offensive stab combos are on this team. The problem is, while it's hard to guard against it specifically, oftentimes these stab combos are unique because they aren't very good. No one has ever gone, oh god, no, a Shiftry or a Cacturne, whatever am I going to do? Well, now that Shiftry is like Heat Wave and stuff, like, okay, different. But, you know, thinking just about their stabs, it's kind of like, you know, you may not be prepared to guard for it, which can be a problem. But there are going to be plenty of times where you just don't even have to think about it because they're weird and you're just kind of prepared for them by accident. Because they're weird. They're, you know, they're unique for a reason. They're not that great. But, so the surprise factor can work against this team as well. And that's kind of that's a small problem. The tried and true offensive, like, stabs are tried and true for a reason. It's because they are very strong and work together well. So there are less answers to them. These unique ones have more common answers, but those answers may not have been prioritized in drafting. So it's going to be a gamble every week, whether or not teams are just accidentally prepared for these or not. At number 10, I have the Sydney Thundurus, coached by ASDF, who was the coach that won the Gyarados League last season. I thought he was going to have the number 1 team up through like round 4 or 5. Because, I mean, look at those first few picks. You got Mawiles Mega, the best Mega in the game. That's legal in our league, at least. Anyone who disagrees with me is wrong, and there's... I mean, let's look at the... Okay, Mega Mawiles, right? It's got, what, 55 speed or something? I don't know. Look at the Colorado team. Look at their speed tiers. That thing does not have to run a single point of speed. You really want to deal with a Mega Mawiles that doesn't even have to run speed? It can just run Adamant plus all of its HP? Oh my god. What are you doing? Get some middling speed in there. Alright, back to Sydney. So, you know, Mawiles Mega. I mean, oh my god. Garchomp with Scale Shot now is a bona fide threat. I mean, okay, like, it's good. It's been good for 15 years or whatever, right? But it's better now than it's been in like 10 years. So it just got a little boost, and now it's like a god again. Slowbro with the addition of Teleport and Heavy Duty Boots is a fantastic defensive pivot. It can hold down a fort pretty well almost all on its own. Spectre, once again, a new addition. Having a special type beast, special type Moxie is crazy good for a special offensive threat with a base 130 speed. If we ignore its terrible move pool, it's a god. Buzzwole hits like an absolute truck, or it stalls the trucks that are trying to hit it with just its 2 bare hands. Look at those muscles. That thing could absolutely stop a rampaging truck. And that's why I was like, this is the best team in the league. There's not even a question. There's no way he can fuck up this draft. What the hell are those last 6 picks? I know he's like now in the low tiers or whatever. These are weird picks. These are not good picks. Like, Muckalola has been relevant since the end of Gen 7. Losing not only Pursuit, but also the Pinchberries? I don't really know what it's doing here. Rotom Frost? There had to be a better Rotom available. Regular Rotom. Round 7, there's no way regular Rotom was gone. Don't tell me he really wanted the Ice typing. There had to be something else there. I don't know if he wants it defensively, but it's Rotom Frost. Why would you run that defensively? I cannot think of a scenario I would want this thing on my team. Maybe if I had Ninetales Alola or like another Hail Setter and I was like, I'm going to double down on shitty ice types. I guess I'd take it. I don't know. Swallow's cool. Swallow's fast. Swallow's neat. I can't actually hold him against drafting Swallow. I love Swallow. Ditto is a crutch pick. Ditto is the I don't really know what I'm wanting to draft. It's good actually for this team to have Ditto because if you look at that top row, if your opponent has a Ditto and copies Mawile, Garchomp, or Spectre, you've probably just lost. But I think drafting Ditto is a sign of weakness. I think using, like, it's just... The only reason you should ever draft Ditto is you're so confident about your other 10 that you're like, I don't need anything else. My team is perfect. Otherwise, it's just like a bluff pick. It's just crappy. Barraskewda, I don't really see the reason to have Barraskewda on this team. It's a frail, physical water type that turns around a lot on rain teams, but without the rain, it just doesn't hit hard enough, which is weird to say because I think it's got like 120 or something offense, but it's just like, once again, it's really fast and it hits fairly hard, but it's just kind of, And then, and then he just threw away his 11th pick. He had a Ditto and he gave away another pick and he drafted fucking Thwackey. I'd have to look at the division. There has to be a real reason to draft Thwackey against this team, or with this team. I don't know what it would be. Thwackey hurts his Garchomp. He doesn't have a ground weakness. There is a 0% chance Thwackey was the best grass type left. Thwackey is the mon I would rather draft Shiinotic than. I'd rather draft Livani. I'd rather draft Swadloon. I'd rather draft... Jesus, what are the other shitty grass types down there? Like Gloom. I don't know. Jesus Christ. Thwackey? What the fuck? Please just trade that after week 1. Thwackey is... Thwackey. There's got to be a reason that he drafted it in division specifically, and I didn't look at the division, so there has to be a reason. Yeah, I really went pick by pick here. Things that are good about this team. Offense. This team kills things very efficiently. Mawile, Garchomp, Spectre, Swallow, they just fucking murder things. It's just, this team kills things. The cons. This team has no utility at all. This team has, let's go bit by bit, 2 Stealth Rockers, Mawile and Garchomp. What the fuck? If you want to beat this team, run Sash a lot. Run Sash and then lead with Pokemon that scare Garchomp. That's a win. This team has no spikes. This team has no toxic spikes. This team doesn't have webs, which I can understand. This team is fast or has priority. This team doesn't actually care about webs. This team has... I've lost it. This team has 2 forms of hazard control. Rotom fucking Frost and Swallow. What the fuck? This team cannot control hazards. It cannot afford to control hazards. This team's going to get bodied. Like, this team is going to have... the way this team prevents hazards is by scaring out the hazard setters with its offensive mons. God forbid they have to come across, like, something that can set up hazards without fear. This team has no Claricine whatsoever. It cannot recover once it's fallen behind. It's just, like, if a couple things get burned, this team is in the tank. It's like he drafted 5 mons and then just, like, hit a button that just did an auto draft for the next 6. Like, this, after the second half, this looks like an NFL auto draft team for fantasy football. This is something I would expect to see in the league. Good lord. I'm sure he's gonna go like 9-3 and just laugh at me every week he wins. But all I can see is just crap after that first half. But that first 5, those first 5 are why he is still 10. Because those first 5 should and probably will come every week. You could bring those 5 in Ditto and just say, fuck the hazard game. And he might do that. Like, I don't know. I don't know. At number 11, and I'm sure I'm going to piss off a lot of people, I have the Minnesota Lycanrocs. I don't like this team. I thought I was going to like this team. And I know that everyone's going to be like, oh my god, it's got Tapu Fini, and you hate Tapu Fini. Just, you have a grudge against Tapu Fini, so you saw it and you were like, oh, fuck this team. This team sucks. No. Tapu Fini is like one of the best 2 things on this team. I don't know what I'm looking at. Tapu Fini is good. Mew, I think, is crazy overrated in draft. I think it's a good utility option. I think it's a good hazard option. I think it's a okay nasty plot user or cheeser with, like, you know, the body press, stored power, garbage sets that it can run. I think it's a terrible offensive, like, physical. I don't know. I can honestly say, without a shred of doubt, I have never once prepped for Mew. I don't care what it does. It can do anything, but half the time it can't do whatever it's trying to do all that well. And I think there's a limit to versatility. So, I don't care about Mew. Not really. I think it's got options. I think it really wants Genesis Supernova back. But, meh. Charizard X is amazing. Charizard X is probably my favorite Mega to use on ladder. And draft, it's fine. It's a terrifying threat that you have to have a specific answer for, like a Rhydon or something. Or you're just going to get absolutely boned. And it can even run defensive. It can run friggin' special sets not that terribly. I think it's got like a 110 or a 130 special attack. Something that's not too bad. Obviously overshadowed by physical, but still. But after that, this draft just absolutely falls apart to me. I think Landorus Eye is bad. I think Escadrille is actually... Escadrille. Escavalier. I was going to say what the fuck. Escavalier is actually fairly good. I've tried to get the other mods to draft it before. It's a fairly good budget steal. Amoonguss is garbage. Amoonguss is absolute bottom-feeding garbage. Greninja is so limited in what it can do without Protean or Battle Bond that it just is fairly ineffective. Cryogonal, I've already given my opinion on defensive ice types. Porygon 2 is dope. I love Porygon 2. I think its best trait is something that it can't even take advantage of on this team, which is Trick Room plus Teleport. Escavalier, of course, can do it. And like a weird, like Adamant Charizard could probably take advantage of it. But it's so instead it's just going to be kind of trading hits. He's going to be using like some sort of Amoonguss Porygon defense with like Tapu Fini or Mew support. It's going to be weird. Hitmonchan I think is not that good. Jolteon is probably the worst or the second worst tier 4 electric. I know there were better electrics. Unless you specifically needed to hit 130, which he might have. I haven't looked once again at the divisions to see maybe if 130 speed matters. But I would rather take Boltund every day of the week. It's at least got coverage. But as far as things this team does well. Speed. Once again, I've been hitting on that with a lot of teams. This team does have a very good speed spread. It's got a couple really low, 20 and 30. Then it has a decent gap until 60, but that's not too bad because it goes 60, 76, 85, 110, 100, 101, 105, 122. So it hits like all the important gaps. 105 to 122 is a kind of, but it's still fine. I mean, 122 is Greninja, 130 is Jolteon, and they're going to come fairly often for their speed. I just think his speedy mods aren't that great, but like Greninja's serviceable enough. Like, no one's really scared of, like, Greninja, even Specs Greninja, because if it doesn't have Battle Bond or Protean, it's just kind of like, I don't know. But the speed is great. Single-minded. Oh, yeah, a lot of these mons can basically only do one thing. Like, relatively. Like, Charizard is a physical attacker. Yes, it can run special. Yes, it can run defensive. But they are significantly less effective than its physical set. Landorus is a special attacker. Escavalier is a bulky physical attacker. Amoonguss eats hit and probably tries to stun spore a couple things. Greninja is a special attacker. Without its other abilities, that's what it does. Cryogonal is fat. Porygon is fat. Hitmonchan is fat. Jolteon hits things with Thunderbolt and Volt Switch or cries. Like, there is not a lot of utility for most of the team. Now, obviously, Mew is like, versatility, the Mon, and Tapu Fini has a surprising amount of things it can do now that it has access to Trick plus Draining Kiss. So its Calm Mind sets is good. Its Choice sets are good now. Its defensive set has always been good. So, like, those two Mons, the first two picks are like, whoa, we can do anything. And then every pick after that just gets, like, more and more and more, like, specialized. And the whole time I've been making that sound like a bad thing, but the specialized of everything is very good. Charizard is a premier physical attacker. Landorus is honestly, I don't really even know. People don't use Landorus all that much. It looks good. Its stats are good. Escavalier is a great physical, bulky thing. It's, similar to Electros in that it doesn't have the momentum, but it's got that kind of, like, energy going on. I hate Amoonguss, but it's good at eating, like, 2 hits and then, like, getting a little bit of chip in and just doing that over and over and over again with Regenerator. I think it's awkward without another Regenerator, but it's got the coverage, like, Mons that can make it work. Greninja, it has to utilize its its obviously specialness with, like, dropping hazards or something from time to time. Porygon 2 is, of course, always going to eat hits, but it's going to heat those hits. I don't know. The team is very single-minded, which will work for it and against it. Cons, momentum. This team will rarely get the drop on you without using doubles. You, of course, can Volt Switch or whatever if it really wants to, but that's often a waste of a move slot. And of course, this is without Baton Pass, because looking up Baton Pass for every Mon makes me my eyes bleed. So there's possible that you'll be like, oh, but X, Y, and Z also have Baton Pass, and they can momentum out. It's like, okay, cool. But, I mean, you've got like 2 Volt Switchers, a U-turner, and like 1 teleporter. And a lot of those, like, so it's just, momentum is going to be a problem for this team. Another problem for this team is similar to the Sydney Thundurus, where my brain has just absolutely shut down. What the fuck has Wish on this team? Well, it's Jolteon, that's why it doesn't matter. Cleric options on this team are bad. You've got one Wisher, which is Jolteon, which is a bad Wisher. You've got Heal Bell on like 2 things. One is Jolteon, one is something else. Probably Mew. It's just, like, once again, kind of like with ASDF teams, ASDF's Sydney Thundurus. Once a few things get statused, there's going to be a very difficult time recovering from that. And that can make or break an entire match. And being able to deal with that is better than not being able to deal with that. At number 12, I have the Rochester Raboot. This team has a lot of really good Mons that kind of blend together and will there are a lot of really good individual Mons that do individual things well, and the hope this coach is going for is that they work well together. Whether or not that's going to be true, we're not 100% sure. Now, things this team is really, really good at. It has really good, really fast Mons. Tornadus, Lopunny, Raikou, they're all very fast, and they all hit very hard if they want to. This team is going to force a ton of Scarfers, because outspeeding those 3 things is super important. And you can take advantage of that because it's got a actually very good like triple defensive thing going on with Ferrothorn, Florges, and Gastrodon. It's got a couple other mons that can be defensive, but I'm going to focus on those three. Like those first 6 picks, they all just they work really well together. So, like they just kind of all cover each other in a great way, and then the remaining picks add extra things, and there's a Raboot there because it's his mascot. But regardless, that top end, that speedy offensiveness is going to be very, very good. Once again, this team is great with all of the utility stuff. It's got a good spread. It's got rockers. It has 2 spikers, which is tasty. It's got toxic spikes. It doesn't have webs. I could understand why it might want webs to invalidate the scarfers that are going to come, but I can see also that it's not necessary. It's got a good spread of hazard control. It's got the clerical moves that are often necessary. It's got a decent amount of momentum, especially on the top end mons that really want it and want to get the drop on the opponent. So there's a lot of really good things going on in the top of that team. The problem is at the bottom. The bottom of this team is nearly unsalvageable. Those last 3 picks are in general bad. Crustle. The problem with Crustle is that he drafted Ferrothorn, and Ferrothorn does the same thing Crustle wants to do, hazard-wise, better. And you can be like, oh, but Crustle has Shell Smash. No one should ever use that and expect to win the match. That's like saying Turtonator has Shell Smash or Magcargo has Shell Smash. Yeah, sure, okay, they do. You gonna expect to win with it? No. Raboot, I mean, yeah, Libro's unbanned for Raboot specifically. Raboot's not good. It's not good. Honchkrow, I love Honchkrow. I used it all the time in Generation 5, and I use it in the lower tiers when I'm on ladder if it's applicable. I don't think it should be drafted in draft. It's not good. He has really good, really meshy, like higher tier picks through like tier 3. Tier 4, tier 5, the picks are basically garbage. Gastrodon's good. I'm going to pretend like it's not part of this conversation. They're like the low end of the low tier. There are significantly better mons that can add much more utility to this team than the 3 he picked. If I had 3 trades and nothing absurd happens with other coaches dropping busted things, I'd probably trade all 3 away for different things at this point. It's just, they're really bad 3 mons. The other thing I don't like about this team is the defensive mons. None of them can get out without a switch. Ferrothorn, Florges, Gastrodon, once they're in, they're in. They don't have U-turn. They don't have teleport. They don't have Volt Switch. I would rather lose momentum by switching out an offensive mon because it doesn't, like Marowak, for example, doesn't have U-turn. I don't care because even if a wall comes in, that wall's getting hurt, and walls, you know, if the wall is Ferrothorn, Gastrodon, or Florges, for example, not necessarily against Marowak, but against like an offensive threat, they aren't going anywhere. So what, like, you have to just worry about like a knockoff or a Thunder Wave or something. Like, you can switch out to something safe. But when you're the one with the defensive mon, it's just like, it feels bad to have a defensive mon that doesn't have that ability to get out without losing momentum. So you have to either be a master of doubling on your opponent, which is super risky if you don't like know exactly what your opponent's going to do, or you just have to suffer momentum drain and try to claw your way back from that, and that sucks almost as much. And I think that's going to be a huge problem this team faces, where they're going to come up against, for example, the Raikos, the Lopunnies, the Tornaduses of the offensive world. They're going to bring in their defensive threat with no momentum, get you turned on, and then be sitting there with a wall against something that's even crazier, and then they're going to be stuck in the cycle because they can't U-turn out. So then they have to make a crazy double, but even if that double is against another U-turner, it's just a terrible spin of death. And I think that's where this team is going to suffer by far the most this season. At number 13, we have everybody's favorite admin, because he is the only admin, the Tennessee Red Gyarados, drafting a team is what I would call it. As everyone could have expected, after multiple seasons of trying different Megas or G-Max Mons that weren't Gyarados, he has given up and gone back to drafting Mega Gyarados, hoping for the glory of past seasons. Well, not seasons of the WPF, but of the UPL at least. This season, he was determined to draft a team that could make Mega Gyarados work, make it shine, and get him his first championship, or at least second playoff win or something like that. So, starting with Mega Gyarados and adding a host of options that should supposedly support it well enough to make it win games. On the plus side, this team is fantastic at doing that. It is absolutely set up to clear the way for Mega Gyarados or his other main sweepers, Neoligo or Volcarona. Specifically with two Mons. Dugtrio, he has drafted a Trapper. This Trapper traps Electrics. Electrics fuck up Gyarados. Of course, there are levitating Electrics, you can run Shed Shell, all sorts of things like that, but it is here, and it is ready to bust shit up. He also drafted several Mons with momentum so that he can get to Dugtrio for free, which is absolutely imperative for its success. U-Turn Corviknight, Teleport Arcanine, Volt Switch Rotom, Baton Pass Double, because Baton Passing defense to Dugtrio matters. U-Turn on Zoroark, technically U-Turn on Volcarona, Teleport on Claydol. All of these Mons could, at the drop of a hat, go to Dugtrio for basically no cost and no risk. That's good. It is going to be able to clear threats fairly well for the main sweeping Mons. This team is also incredibly cheesy, beyond the trapping. I mean, look, he's got all of, like, the cheesy things. He's got Double, which has been relatively famous recently for passing incredible defensive boosts to Mons, giving free victories if you don't have any sort of phasing. He's got Zoroark, which with Illusion just is absolutely disgusting. People just have to really hope that he doesn't screw up and try to make it copy Mons that have obvious abilities like Pressure Corviknight or Intimidate Gyarados or Intimidate Arcanine or, so on and so forth. Because if you try to copy that and it's obvious that it's not it, well, then no longer, it's basically not an Illusion Zoroark. Beyond that, though, it's actually really good. It's got, U-Turn, Flamethrower, good dark moves, good Swords Dance stuff. Like, it's got a lot of good things. So, Sludge Bomb. Like, it's just got good stuff. With Illusion, this team just can absolutely, Arena Trap, Double, Zoroark. This team can cheese through anything. It's got, it can run Bulk Up Corviknight. It can run Calm Mind Cofagrigus. It can run Quiver Dance Volcarona. Meteor Beam Neoligo. There's just every way to kind of cheese your opponent out of a victory. And that's a very interesting strategy, and I cannot wait to see how it works. The downsides of this team. This man hates cores, or at least hates prioritizing them with any sort of certainty. Now, he's got a great Fire Water Grass core. Mega Gyarados, Arcanine, Rotom Mow is actually a quite good core. I really like it. I like Rotom Mow. Maybe not as much as Heat. I hate Rotom Wash. I understand it's good. I don't like it. But Mow is probably my second favorite. But as far as the rest goes, the Psychic Fighting Dark core doesn't exist. He's got a Psychic, which is Claydol, a Dark, which is Zeraora, and no Fighting type. Dragon Fairy Steel, didn't draft a Dragon. Didn't draft a Fairy. Drafted a Steel, which is a good Steel. Electric, Ground, and Poison. Decent Electric. Pretty good Poison. The ground is Claydol. Again. Well, I guess Dugtrio exists too. Actually, I didn't even write that. Yeah, I should fix that. Alright. It looks better now. He got a whole extra point in my analytics thing. Wow. And his ghost is Cofagrigus, which is a good ghost, but it's certainly not a prioritized ghost. But yeah, the cores were obviously an afterthought. He was looking for Mons that were specifically kind of satisfying the strategy he wanted to work for. It wasn't a build a good team, it was build a good strategy. And that might work out, but it also might fail terribly. Other big problem with this team is if you look at this team, please tell me if you can find the Scald switch in. I'm waiting. This team cannot handle water types. Is two resists Rotom Mow, which doesn't have recovery outside of Pain Split. and Gyarados, who he does not want to risk taking on water attacks. The rest of the team is either weak or does not enjoy it. This is going to be a huge problem for him all season. He has got to get that figured out. This team... water is like one of the most offensive general types in the game. Like it's probably the most common attack type. Just because fucking everything has Scald. Jesus Christ. It's rough. It's rough. And the team is going to... I don't know. Like, obviously the team is very set up to do specifically what he's looking to do. Whether or not it works, I cannot begin to tell you. I'm very interested to find out. Number 14, we have the Bayside Brionnes. I spelled Brion wrong, didn't I? Oh well. That is what it is. The Bayside Brionnes. Drafting Brionne with the first overall pick because, you know, I want to give myself a disadvantage in the more competitive league. Because I'm that amazing, I guess, or something. I don't know. I don't like it. I think it's a moronic pick. I think that kind of pick is a pick of a coach that should probably go to Magikarp unless they win the fucking league. So I'm very curious to see how it happens. I can understand getting great value out of a pick. I could see picking like a tier 2 if it's an absurd tier 2 or something like that. Picking a tier 5 that is uncontested in the entire league is essentially, you know, for basically a meme reason is absurd. Yes, Brionne is fine. As far as tier 5 waters go, I think it's valuable. I think it's viable. I think picking it with the second overall pick of the draft is a garbage decision. Moving on to the other picks, which I generally don't have a problem with. There are some really good things here. I've been waiting for someone to draft Breloom for a very long time. Finally, I said, fuck it. It's down in tier 3 now from tier 2. Look at that. It got drafted in round 3. I'm very happy. Weavile's great. Nidoking's great. There's a lot of really good offensive threats here. There's some fine defensive options here. It's got a lot of things that can work well. Utility-wise, this team does, I believe, have just about everything. In fact, it does. There may only be 2 rockers with Forretress and Nidoking, but it's got all the other hazards. It's got a couple spikers. It's got a couple toxic spikers. It's got webs for those middling offensive threats. Hazard control, 3 options is kind of low, but there's 3 options, and all of them... Okay, 2 of them don't... In fact, 2 of them often run the option one necessarily can. You know, Fortress always did Rapid Spin. Klefki often is Defog now, unless it's running screens, in which case you don't really run Defog anyway. And then Latios can if it has to. Other than that, I mean, it's got the cleric options you need. It has a Heal Beller, it has a Wisher. Umbreon's good at both, and that's often what it's going to do. You know, it's got the goods. Pick value. Yes, this team got great value. It got Weavile, who's probably one of the best tier 2s. It got Breloom, one of the best tier 3s. Nidoking, one of the best tier 3s. It just got a lot of really good options with the picks that it made. It got, like, those picks are often all high tier versions of the Pokemon of, like, what's in that tier. So that's fantastic. The downside is the pick value of when they chose these things. Nobody... Well, okay. It's really... I'm ragging on Brionne here because I know the coach when they were drafting said, you know, I'm still going to get really good stuff later. And yeah, they got Latios and Blacephalon out of tier 1 later. We're ignoring that Mega tier 4 right now. But... the team could have been better. It doesn't matter if you get good things later. This team could have been so much better. Brionne could be on the bottom right there where Forretress is now. Would never have been sniped. There is nobody in this league guaranteed. If anyone here says that they might have thought about taking... Okay, someone might have thought about taking it. I can guarantee you nobody here was going to pull that trigger except this team. You could have something so much better. This team, doesn't matter how good your team is. The team could have been better. That's why you're down to 14. Because you made choices that actively made the team worse. There's teams... You're actually probably better than probably the 13 or the 14, like the 12 teams, to be honest. But the decision of the drafting is horrible. And that's something that has to be fixed to be a successful coach. Because that's an entire third of what matters. Last thing I don't like, I think Fortress is a garbage pick in general. It's the last pick. It was basically a throwaway pick. I think there's probably something better in Tier 3. They didn't need a steal. No one needs a bug type. The hazard game was actually fairly under control. If you picked up, whatever you picked up at Tier 3 and it had hazards and wasn't a Fortress, this team would be higher. Fortress hasn't been relevant since Black and White. That's just all there is to it. I don't even think it should be Tier 3, but I was outvoted this season. So evidently, the other people on the council think that this thing is a viable Tier 3. And I guess Bayside Brionnes are going to prove me wrong because they're the ones who drafted it. Down at number 15, we have the Farmland Farfetch'd. On the plus side, the Farmland Farfetch'd drafted Zamazenta Crowned, which we have decided to allow into the league on a trial basis this season, along with that Speed Boost Blaziken you saw earlier. How could a team that got Zamazenta Crowned be 15th? Well, by drafting 10 other Mons. That's how. Honestly, I am not high on Zamazenta Crowned at all. I don't even think it's all that good. The 720 BST with 128 speed and crazy bulk and an ability that makes that bulk better. It's like, oh my god. This thing is absolutely busted, but I do not expect it to be busted at all this season. I expect there to be problems with it, and it's going to be up to the rest of the team to support it, which is absolutely what it needs, which is why I don't think it is busted. I think you have to draft a specific style of team around this Mon to make it not garbage. That being said, it looked like Farmland was actually going to do that. Following up Zamazenta with Rotom Wash and Sylveon was a fantastic choice. Those Mons, when all put together, form a fantastic bulky core. Like, that is a bulky offensive core right there. That's wonderful. Following up with Bulu absolutely helps neutralizing the ground attacks. It's the Mons around that I do not really understand. Salazzle is good. Like, Salazzle is fine. It's a generic glue pick. Rhyperior, especially in the 5th round, I don't understand. I actually don't understand the point of Rhyperior on this team outside of providing a rocker. Because you may have noticed, but on this team, there is one user of Stealth Rocks. And that is Rhyperior. Which means it's going to come a lot more than you would expect a Rhyperior to come this season, let me tell you. Articuno Galar is interesting. It's a fun, interesting Mon. I don't think it really does anything to support Zamazenta or the team that had been drafted before it as a whole. Altaria Mega is really hurting as far as options available to it now. People always say you can run a special set. Yeah, but the special set's fairly bad. You can run like a Cotton Guard set. It's really annoying to face, but once again, it's kind of like it doesn't have a refresh anymore or whatever, so it's kind of It's got Dragon Dance, but it lost Return or Frustration, whichever you prefer. Now it relies on Body Slam, which was always an option before because Paralysis is a fantastic status, but when it's your only option, it does feel worse. Porygon Z is a fantastic special attacker. Kind of feels a little awkward because it fills a lot of the same role as Articuno does, but we'll gloss over that for now. Jumpluff is garbage. I don't understand why it was drafted. And it doesn't even get the boost from grassy terrain. So, I don't get it. And then Houndoom is his dark type and his fire type, and it's bad. So, here's hoping. I would love to see. Every time he drafts and I do power rankings, I think his teams are garbage. I think he started out 13 the season he made it to finals, so I can't wait to see how I'm proven wrong. But there's a lot of problems with this team. Now, Zamazenta is supported beautifully by the 3 Mons that matter. Zamazenta, Rotom, Sylveon, Tapu Bulu, those should basically come to all the matches. They support this man. This team is like the definition of a bulky offensive team. This team is going to grind you down with hits and just hope that it stays alive a little bit longer than you. It doesn't have a lot of setup. You know, Zamazenta's Howl or Work Up, but those are just not great options. Slazzle has Nasty Plot or Dragon Dance. Once again, awkward options. Slazzle's like in a weird spot where it doesn't like hit hard enough, but it's also not fast enough. It's weird. Rhyperior has Sword Stance, but it's slow and it's got problems. Bulu has Sword Stance, but it's too slow. Articuno really wishes it had Nasty Plot, but it only has Called Mine. Altaria has Dragon. Like there are set up options, but like all of them are kind of like middling. They're not terrifying. There isn't a single mod on this where I have to, like, if it hits its setup move, I've lost. It doesn't have Sword Stance Garchomp. It doesn't have Dragon Dance Mega Gyarados. It doesn't have, you know, those are the things where once they've hit that one, Quiver Dance Volcarona, like, it doesn't have those things where once they've hit that move, it's over. They just don't really exist. I mentioned it earlier, but there is one Stealth Rocker on this team, and that is Rhyperior. Oh, that's fine, right? There's other hazards. Nope. No spikes. No toxic spikes. No sticky web. There is one rocker and no other hazards. If I thought ASDF's team was bad for hazards with the Sydney Thundurus, this is abysmal. You cannot afford to bring Rhyperior 12 weeks. This has got to get fixed. There are two mons that run hazard control. You've got Rotom and Altaria. You're really going to run Defog Rotom 12 weeks? Can't do that. I thought Jumpluff at least had it. It never learned Defog. It's a flying type from Gen 2. It's never got Defog. This team has... I don't. You don't even have to run heavy duty boots against this team. All those flyers and shit just got a free pass for leftovers or Rocky Helmet or whatever they want. Doesn't matter. I don't know about that. This team hates ice and fighting. There are some massive problems. They're going to rely way too heavily on Rotom and Sylveon to wall those respective types. And God forbid if an ice attacking mon has coverage for Rotom or a fighting attacking mon has coverage for Sylveon. Because this team is going to fall apart like just instantly if that's the case. So they better hope with all their might that they have a way to deal with that. Otherwise, it is going to be a long, painful season for the Farmland Farfetch'd. That's not even to mention this team really... Once I was saying this team doesn't really have a click a button and you won mon, it also has a hell of a time dealing with click a button and you've won mons. Like, that is basically Zamazenta's bread and butter. Yes, I understand. It is literally the anti-hyper offense mon. But that's it. If you can't safely get Sylveon to wish it back up, you're in a rough shape. If they can hold off clicking that one button until Zamazenta's at like half, then it may as well not be Zamazenta. So I think there's a lot of different hazards. Once again, this team can't get rid of hazards consistently. If someone puts up rocks, a layer of spikes or something, Zamazenta's, oh my god, not nearly as good. What's the point of the defense boost if you lose 18% on a switch it or something? I don't know. I think this team has a long, painful road ahead of them, but not probably as long and painful as number 16, the Warsaw Rapidash, who have exercised a good exercise, who have started I don't even know where I'm going with that. They have drafted a lot of things that are like average to bad of their own tiers. It's going to be an interest, like, that's fine normally if they can all put it together, but I don't know where this team is really going. I think it's nowhere, and I can only imagine ways that I might be wrong. On the plus side, once again, I haven't brought it up in a few teams now, but the speed spread. Warsaw actually has a great speed spread once again. The biggest gap is from 20 to 50, which is, once again, not generally an important speed gap. Then it jumps up by like 10 or 15 every time after that. 50 50 to 60 to 75, and then you're in those middle 75, 77, 80, 81. Got a couple 95s in there, and then you got the high end 110, 113, 120. I wish there was something like 100, 105 in there, but that can be excused. But so the options are certainly all there. What the heck is even 120? Oh, fast when Minior's broken. I think Minior's only 60 when it's not broken, but once it is the fastest thing on the team. Which, once again, that is actually a kind of concern. This team is also the team of one-turn wonders. Azumarill Belly Drum, Minior Smellsash, Shell Smash. I've been talking for too long, goddamn. Good thing I'm almost done. But yeah, it's got some very good one-turn wonder mons. Technically, you can count Superior there with Leaf Storming Contrary. It's got lots of ways to just take over a game right away. The problems with this team lie a lot in the cores. With the cores, like, the Firewater Grass core is suspect at best. I think Superior is largely garbage, even for a Tier 3 this season. It lost all its coverage, all its coverage was literally hidden power, so it's not going to have a lot to begin with, but just having Grass and Dragon as offensive types is bad. Glare support is always welcome, that is certainly true, but how often can you glare things before? Like, it's just... That's literally its only good point now, is Glare plus Contrary Leaf Storm. Don't try to sell me on a Subseed set. Don't try to sell me on like a Contrary on a Defog to get Evasion set. Definitely don't try to sell me on Swords Dance or Coil. Those don't exist. So the core itself is just kind of like Heatran is good, but Azumarill's awkward. Like, it can't come in, it can't take hits, it can't really deal hits unless it's Bandit or Assault Vest, otherwise it's blown its whole load. Assault Vest, Azumarill doesn't hit hard enough, it's bulky enough. Bandit is certainly good. I'm not going to discount Bandit, but it once again doesn't really want to switch in. It's just an awkward core. Beyond that, the Dark, like the Psychic Fighting Dark core is terrible. It didn't draft a Psychic, of course. Fighting type is Primeape, which can come. It's a good Scarfer, but doesn't have a lot else going for it. Dark type, of course, is Mega Sableye, which I love Mega Sableye, but you know, it's good enough. Dragon Fairy Steel Core is actually quite good. Goodra, Azumarill, Heatran, there's a lot of good things going on there. But, you know, I don't know. The cores are just kind of awkward. The other problem is that if you discount Smeargle, if you take Smeargle out of the equation, the utility moves this team brings drops drastically. If you pull Smeargle out of the equation, the only person who has worse utility is the Farmland Farfetch'd. Because all of a sudden you go from having a few rockers in every hazard to having 3 rockers. Gliscor, Heatran, and Minior. So Minior is never going to run it, so you may as well have 2. Both certainly can, but it feels bad to be forced to run rocks on both of them, like on one of them every single week. They have so many other things that they would like to do. And then you'd have no other hazards. So it gets drastically bad fast. And let me tell you, running the Smeargle feels bad. This is not a hyper offense team. What is Smeargle gonna do? Where is the hyper offense? Yeah, you've got Azumarill and Minior. And you've got 2 good anti-defog mons, sure. That can't be the strategy, right? If that's the strategy, why would you draft Sableye? Draft a Mega that can take advantage of it. Your Mega is your most powerful slot. Man, I don't know. I think this team, like, it's weird. This team's hyper offense can be good, but it also doesn't look that great. But if you don't have the hyper offense, then Smeargle can't come. And if Smeargle can't come, all of a sudden you don't have hazards. So, I don't know, man. I think this team is going to have a lot of trouble. I think Superior was not a good pick. 3rd round especially, massive waste of potential. Azumarill's rarely drafted at all. Didn't need to go in the 5th round. I think there's much things on this team that could have been drafted. Like, after the first 2 rounds, everything that was drafted could have been drafted in the last 3 rounds. So I think there's a lot of wasted potential where they could have gotten better things than what they did when they did. And this team would probably be better, but it only contain like half the things it does. I don't know. I think this team is in for a rough awakening this season. I think it's going to just get beat down repeatedly. I'm probably wrong at least a little bit, but I don't know. I do think it's the weakest team in the league. Now, that being said, now that I've gone through all 16 teams, and here's a little recap for you guys, showing where I did end up ranking everybody. I do not think that there is a single team on paper this season that could not win the league with a good enough coach. There are definitely seasons where I have looked at some teams and gone, you could put the best coach in the league on this team and they couldn't win it. But I don't think that is the case this season. Even those that I listed like 14, 15, 16, if the coach is playing well enough, I think those teams can get all the way to the very end. And that's something I don't think I could say very many seasons. This might be the first. I'd have to look through the archives, but I know at least for power rankings, there have been teams every season where I've gone, there's no fucking way. But even if I go back up to 16, this team has all of the pieces to win the league. This team has all of the pieces it needs to win the league. This team has all the pieces it needs, like so on and so forth. I think that I could win the league with any team that was drafted. Anything in the bottom half here wouldn't even necessarily be in the bottom half of a normal season's draft. You guys drafted great. And for any of you who are gutsy enough to stick it out through almost 2 hours of talking about this draft, you guys did well. I hope I could say the same thing about the Magikarp League when I look at it later. I have not really looked at their teams yet, but at least here in Gyarados League, you guys drafted quite well. Even the teams that I think are bad, and I don't know why it says 13, 13, 14, 14. You understand where I put you all. But I think even those teams on the bottom if the coach plays well and maybe you use those 3 trades to maybe fix a couple spots, every team there is more than possible to make it to the very end. So all in all, I'm actually quite proud of the ranking I'm proud of the rankings too. I put a lot of fucking work into this, but I'm quite proud of the way you guys have done so far with your drafting this season, and I am absolutely looking forward to seeing how you guys battle it out over the next 12 weeks. I think it's going to be a hell of a season. We got 16 fantastic coaches here, and I have no idea who's going to win it all. And that's fantastic. With that, that's all I have for you guys today. I will be revisiting with updated rankings after week 3 for you. I'm planning to do it after the divisional match of week 3, after the conference matches of week 5, non-conference of 7, conference of 9, and then one last one after the 12th week when the divisional rounds have wrapped up and we're heading into playoffs. So you guys should get several more videos this season. Can't wait to see where you guys get shifted as we go forward. I'll start ranking you more on where the coaches are playing, how the coaches are playing, as opposed to specifically what the teams are. Although, of course, as you guys do make trades and whatnot, that may affect your ranking, whether I like it or not, whether I like the trades or I don't like the trades. And you'll certainly find out when you do make those trades. But I just noticed, is the Lafayette logo reversed? I'm going to have to ask him about that. Maybe it's on purpose. I honestly don't know. But I think it might be reversed. Very interesting. Well, regardless, I have talked for 2 hours now. And that is way more than I needed to talk. I cannot believe I just did that. I look forward to doing the Magikarp rankings. I don't know if I'll talk for 2 hours again. This is absurd. I'm sure I have a very lonely wife in the other room, and I'm going to go tend to that now. So I will see you guys in a few weeks.